Gonna make a video. Um, I was gonna speak about a different topic, but right now I just felt like speaking about boredom because I'm bored as fuck right now. But more of like a just existential boredom. And I don't know if it's just as I'm getting older, or maybe just as I get more conscious and realize more things about the truth. Um, yeah, because I feel like when I was younger, I didn't really get bored that often. I can't really remember being bored that often. I think because there was just always something new. There was always something new to discover, something new to do. But especially like in this last year, I don't know. It's not like, it's not a feeling. You guys can let me know if you've experienced this as well. It's not really a feeling like, of course, I'm not always feeling that this, but it's kind of like an underlying feeling, and then certain times it comes out more starkly, like now. But it's more, it's not like, I'm just feeling bored right now, like I want to do something, and then you just do it, and then you just feel better. It's more like, it doesn't make sense because usually boredom is like when you're bored because there's nothing to do, or you're bored of what you're doing, and then you want to do something else, and then after that, like you just want some entertainment or something, and then after that, you just feel fine again because you're no longer bored, you're entertained. But this feeling of boredom I'm speaking about is more like I feel bored, and at the same time, I still don't have the desire to do anything. Like, it's not like, I feel bored and I'm thinking, yeah, like let me do something like that. Yeah, I just need to do something. I'll feel good, and then of course sometimes I'll feel like this and I'll do something, and then well, as I said, nothing in this relative plane lasts forever because it's all just transitory. It's all just impermanent. However, it's more like a just boredom of life. That might sound like depressing or nihilistic, which I guess you could say is that. But that's just the truth about how I've been feeling recently. This isn't really like a video explaining a particular topic or going in depth or something. I'm just kind of expressing myself here. Yeah, it's like a persistent feeling of being bored of life. I feel like, of course, there's many different factors. I feel like a lot of people in my generation feel like this as well sometimes. They may not say it. But I think the new technology, the internet, the new media, and so on, this also has a part to play. I'm not saying this just only because of that. But I think that the amount of information that people get access to at such a young age and the amount of exposure, it's almost like by the age of 20, 25, 30, it's like even if a certain experience was not experienced directly by yourself, vicariously through watching videos of others who are speaking about their experiences, and especially when they're able to summarize it quite well and give a kind of overview, and then you're kind of able to see or imagine what they've experienced and what they've learned. Like, let's say you've never been a millionaire, but you've probably watched 100 videos of millionaires speaking about what it's like to be a millionaire, and what they realize. Oh, what I realized as a millionaire, or what I realized as this, and then like a millionaire, that's just one thing. And then like imagine, and then let's say you're an atheist, but then you can watch videos of religious people and hear all of their stuff, and then you can watch. You get the point. Essentially, the amount of information that we have access to now is so absurd. It's not saying like it's a bad thing. Of course, it's good, but to some degree, it's useful. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure there's been quite a few studies where they actually show, or they've tested with like lab rats and things like that, where certain times overstimulation is what leads to depression. And not even just a lack of stimulation, but overstimulation. It's almost like, imagine in a normal life, 80 years, you're supposed to see, I'm coming up with an arbitrary unit of measurement here, because you can't really measure experience. But let's just say in 80 years, you were supposed to have like 100 units of experience, like throughout your life, for a variety of different experiences. When you did this, you did that, and then you learned this, and so on and so forth. You spoke with that person, you learned that amount, and then that amounts to 100. But now with the internet, with social media, with all this stimulus, all this information, it's like you can experience 100 units of experience in a matter of 20 years. Even if the experience isn't as direct, and perhaps it might not land as deeply, because usually you have to experience something yourself to really truly learn. However, still the effects, I think, also do play a part. Just as an example, let's say 50 years ago or 100 years ago, you're a young man and you're horny, same as all young men are. And the way the society is structured at that point, there's no such thing as porn. There's no such thing as, you might say, of course, what's the word? Forgot. Prostitution. Of course, that existed for a long time, but I'm sure most people may not have been able to afford that, or it was completely shunned and probably very difficult access to get a prostitute, and you would have been looked down upon and so on. So any respectable way to fulfill your desire of having a woman or whatever, you would have to work, you would have to get a job, get a house, then court a woman, you'll get a woman. See, there was no means of easily accessing and seeing naked women. Especially those times, they were a lot more modestly dressed. So you would genuinely have to get a wife even to see a naked woman, like once. There were certain men, like 100 years ago, probably the majority of men had never seen a naked woman until after marriage. So the point I'm making here is that whole time when they was working, and so I'm not saying that that system was better than this system or anything like that. I'm just trying to make a point here. You see, they always had something to look forward to that they hadn't experienced yet. Like they hadn't even experienced what it's like to be with a woman. That whole time they're working, they're trying to get that woman, get married and so on. They're just imagining what it's gonna be like, all this kind of stuff, and then that's driving them, and they have that to look forward to. And then let's say you end up getting that woman, you have sex, you enjoy that, so on and so forth, and then let's say back those times, of course, everyone around you would have have a family as well. But there was very limited amount of people that you could access and speak to and communicate with. Maybe the people in your village or in your small town. So there's only a limited amount of information of what you can derive about what it's like to have a family. So they probably didn't even know what it's like to have your own family. So that's something that they were looking forward to as well. I want to know, I want to like have children as well and have my own family. I want to experience what that's like. And even though that's still the case now you may not even have a family, and you could listen to 1,000 different people speaking who already have had a family, who are telling you what it's like, the upsides, the downsides. And it's coming to a point to where it's almost like it's untrue, because you do need to experience things direct, like firsthand, to really understand a thing. However, it's almost like people can get an understanding of something or think they understand without even experiencing it, and then they'll no longer have the desire for that. Like for example, with a lot of the younger generations now, like my generation, the generations like younger than me, a lot of them don't want to get married, and I don't I'm not surprised, um, because they've kind of seen the downsides of that, how it can go wrong. They've seen that from their parents, from their grandparents. And me personally, I think the system is just set up in such a way where it almost incentivizes us to not get married at this point, or at least for men. But for example, if there was no internet or no social media, all those people, they would have probably gone on and went to have families, because they wouldn't have known, and they would have at least wanted to experience what it's like. See, so I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. Now we have a lot more information. We're becoming a lot more conscious. But at the same time, as a result, everyone is becoming disillusioned of this American dream, in a sense. Um, like, if you have less information, you're easier to manipulate. Like, let's just say, for example, I'm not saying this is the case. Again, this is just to make another point. Let's just say, for example, the system or the matrix or whatever, it doesn't really matter. I'm not saying like some elite group behind the curtain or something, but just this force of nature of the collective humans consciousness. Let's say this system wants us to reproduce a lot, so that the system can, in a sense, replicate itself and self-perpetuate itself. If nobody knew about the potential downsides of marriage, potential downsides of working a 9 to 5, all of just the common, the laid out path that you're supposed to take, in a sense. A lot more people will do that if they are completely unaware of the possible downsides and are only focusing on the upsides, which the system is upselling to them. However, if you now get a generation like my generation and the younger generations who've seen where it goes wrong with their parents and their grandparents, and who have seen thousands of other people speaking about it on the internet, now they're more aware of the truth of the matter. I'm not saying that our marriage is all bad or something like that, but they're more aware of just the complete spectrum of what it is, rather than just only looking at half of the side of, oh yeah, the American dream, having the family with the white picket fence. And now they're seeing the other side as well, and now they can make a more accurate decision on whether they want to engage in that or not. And see, if the system's objective agenda was to make the majority of people do that, it would be easier for them if the collective was more ignorant and unaware of these truths. But now it's come to a point to where it's, with the internet and so on, it's almost irreversible what's happened now. And yeah, so the whole reason why I even went on that little tangent as well was because I was just speaking about that. Like, for example, having a family, having a wife, having kids, that's one of the main incentives of the matrix, of the system, like one of the main rewards. And now people are seeing through that. What else is there? Of course, just normal, like, of course, having a family and getting a wife, part of that, as I just explained, was the desire for sex as well. So if people are starting to see that marriage isn't like what it appears to be, or what people used to think it was, or it's just not working in this current environment, and if they're seeing, like, especially because things have become over-sexualized now, and there was a sexual revolution, like, since the contraceptive pill and contraception and all of this kind of stuff. Most people are not virgins in this society. Like, anyone over 21, like, is most likely not a virgin. So after a while of having sex a few times, like, sex is fun, like, it's pleasurable, like, that's for sure. However, like, after a few times of engaging in that, and you see the reality of it, see, what's so tricky about life, right? And I was going to actually make a video about that, the honey trap, and just clickbait in a sense. Like, nature uses the honey trap and it uses clickbait. Like, clickbait is not even something that humans have done. Like, the bait and hook, nature uses that all the time. It's so fucked because pretty much, like, so many of the desires that people have, like, that I have, that you have, if you pay attention when you desire them and then when you engage in them and then after, what you'll realize is that, of course, engaging in it is fun and so on. And it's better than just kind of being at your baseline. But if I was to put it, to try and put it accurately, it's almost as if the desire to get that thing, whatever it is, the desire to get X, and how good you think it will be before you get it. Like, so let's say, like, the desire to get X will be 100. And then when you get it, you'll still enjoy it, but the enjoyment may only be 50 or like 20. But even after experiencing, and then like there's a whole saying like post nut clarity. Like after you have sex and you bust your nut, then you get that clarity. Of course, if you're with a girl that you really like in the past with like my ex and so on or whatever, like if you actually like the girl, you're not gonna really want to just like leave right after, if you get what I'm saying. You're not gonna like look over and then be thinking, what the fuck? But if you are having sex with a girl just because you want to have sex and she's the only one that you have access to at this moment in time and you don't really desire her, then you will probably get that feeling. But that whole reason why I said that is just because things are usually disappointing when we get them. And even though we know that, because we've experienced it many times, like there's many times you wanted that thing, you got it, and then maybe it made you feel good for the day or something, but it wasn't even all that what you thought it was going to be. And then you're slightly disappointed, but you still enjoyed it. So you think, oh, it's better than nothing, right? And even though we know that, because desire will never, like, as long as we're alive, you always have desire, because as I've explained in my past videos, life and desire are intimately linked. Because the desire is still there, like you could think that sex is overrated. You've had sex before, you enjoyed it, but you realize it's not all that. And especially what some of these girls, like the type of investment that they want you to do in order just to have sex with them, then you start realizing, all right, cool. Yes, sex is cool, but like the investment required certain times is larger than the payoff. And even though you could know that after experiencing it, because the programming in your human body is so deep to procreate, you're still going to go and chase it, even if you know it's not going to be that satisfying. So my whole point is that the desire to get the things are stronger than the enjoyment of the thing. And people think they are chasing X, whatever it is, X or Y or Z. They think they're chasing X for the enjoyment of it. And even though that's partially true, it's actually just because the drive is so strong. The drive just to get something, the drive to get more. That's what you really need to understand, is just that drive to get more never goes away. So nothing that we can get in this world will ever satisfy us. And that's why the millionaires aren't satisfied, the billionaires aren't satisfied, the trillionaires aren't satisfied, neither are the poor people. And no matter what position you're in, you just want more than you have now. But the problem is, see, that system would work if there was a finite amount to get. And then once you got everything, you won the game. But there's not a finite amount to get. There's an infinite amount. So when it's structured like that, like imagine you was hungry. See, where I'm saying it would be fine if it was finite. It's like I'm saying, like, imagine you're hungry and then you have one meal and then you feel full. That's good. So that's good, right? You feel satisfied, so to speak. And realize, even with that, with that analogy, when you feel satisfied, it's not even really the food that made you satisfied. It's just the absence of the hunger drive. You just feel satisfied because you no longer feel that drive to get food because you're no longer hungry. So same with sex as well. Like people think the orgasm's so good and it isn't very enjoyable, but it's literally it only like you only get that relief because actually the feeling of being horny is actually an agitated state. The feeling of being hungry is an agitated state. That's an agitated feeling. You want to get rid of that. So it's not the food or the orgasm per se that you want. You want to get rid of that feeling, that empty feeling, or that feeling of incompleteness. Whether that be, oh, I'm horny, so I want to have sex to complete, or I'm hungry, so I want to have food to, or I'm poor, so I want to get money to. You see? But yeah, with that food analogy, I was going to make another point. Yeah, so if you're hungry and then you have one meal and then you feel full, then that's fine. But then imagine, no matter how much food you ate, you never got full. You was just never satisfied. And in a sense, it's kind of like that because we have to continuously eat. But just imagine just not even in the micro, because like in the micro sense, like to where you just, no matter how much you ate, you just was always hungry. Always hungry. That's in a sense kind of what's happening with human desire. Or just with desire as a general life's desire. But then when you really understand that there's infinite to get, so in a sense you can never win the game by getting more. And you'll never be satisfied because no matter how much you get, you still want more. Then, yeah, that can lead to like the feeling of unfulfillment. But also there was another point I was just thinking about. Yeah, I still can't remember what point I was going to make, but yeah, so pretty much with this, all of that stuff I was explaining before, it's just like, see, you get entertained by new experiences and by surprises, a variety. As I've explained in my last video, how richness is actually having an abundance of variety. So you can enjoy the experience of learning and experiencing new things which you've never experienced before. See, life, because really I only started experiencing this existential boredom after attaining to self-realization. Because, how can I put it, like, life is only exciting when you think you can die. Winning only means something when you think you can lose. Existing only means something when you think you cannot exist, or like the possibility that you will cease to exist. But when you're directly conscious that you are yourself I am myself. The truth is true. There was never a point in time where I was not myself. There was never a point in time where the truth was not true. There was never a point in time where existence did not exist. It's almost like, and I've said before in the past that I really wouldn't. Of course, this is not me saying this is absolute truth, but just me speculating from everything that I've been conscious of. Like, I really wouldn't be surprised. And I've already explained the mechanics of how everything exists, but I really wouldn't be surprised if all of this whole dream, this whole Maya, this whole show, it's literally just all for entertainment, and it all arose out of boredom, out of God, the self, out of the absolute boredom. Because the self is conscious and it exists eternally. Imagine just being in a room by yourself forever with no stimulus. Like, just actually imagine that. And notice how even when they put people in, when they put prisoners in, what the fuck is that word? Isolation. Like the confinement, they start like if they keep them there long enough, they start going crazy. They'll even start seeing shit and speaking to themselves. Why is that? It's genuinely a lack of entertainment and stimulus. So their brain had to start imagining stuff to stimulate themselves, to entertain themselves. And that's in a sense what God's doing. It's just dreaming a dream. Because everything in this dream doesn't exist. Like, everything you see isn't. Only the self is. And then it seems like, but then why does it seem like these things are when they aren't? It's only because you are. Because the self is, and it can imagine anything, even if what it imagines isn't, it will appear to be that it is, only because the self is. See, as long as the self, see, I have to start speaking about solipsism as well. Like, the self is the only thing that exists. Solipsism is actually true. There are not many consciousnesses. There are not many selves. There are not even many people. There's literally only one consciousness. And everything that it... See, imagine you are a conscious being. As I said, that in that room of that isolation room. See, when those people, they start hallucinating, what do they start hallucinating? Do they start hallucinating the room that they're already in? Like, let's say they put me in solitary confinement, and this is the room that they put me in. Do they start imagining about the room that they're already in? Do they start imagining themselves, who they already are? Or do they start imagining humans and things which aren't already in the room? See, so because the self is itself, and that's all it could ever be, and the truth is true, and that's all it could ever be. If it wanted to entertain itself, it wouldn't imagine itself. It would imagine other. It would imagine everything that it isn't already. And that's in a sense what's happened. See, everything that you see, if what I'm saying is true, and you are the only being in existence, and then you're going to say, oh, but like you exist, and like he exists, and she exists, and all of this kind of stuff, and like the world exists. So like what you're saying is false. But then, of course, I've already explained in my past few videos how you can't escape your own consciousness. There's no way of verifying that there even is an external world. You've never even seen an other. You've only seen a representation of what could be an other. A representation of an other. Whether that be an ant or a human or an angel or a fucking tiger or space, the Milky Way, or the sun, or a grain of sand, or an enlightened guru. You have no way of knowing if any of those things really exist outside of your own mind. And in fact, they don't. They actually don't. And everything you see in this dream it's very mechanic. Like, it's very mechanism. The dream's mechanism is to appear to you, the self, which is the only thing that's here, which is the only thing that's true. Only you are real. So everything you see will appear in such a way to where it will be contrary to the truth. So since the self is the only thing that exists, the only thing that's real, everything within the dream that it dreams will suggest to it that it isn't the only thing in existence, and that it isn't the only thing that's real. So that's why you start imagining that you're like a human with other humans. That's why you start imagining that you're a human on Earth with other humans and other like animals. So other humans, other animals, and see, because the self is the only thing that exists, even when it imagines others, those others, they have to overlap with the self to some degree. And how that overlaps is that since the self is actually the only thing that's real and that exists, the others that it imagines are going to appear as if they're real and they exist. And then that's how you can say, look, they're other than me. Like, that human is a different other, but they're still like me. Like, it's still like another human that can, and even animals, like animals are different to us, but they're like us. They're also sentient beings with consciousness and so on. And then even a tree, you might say a tree is different to me, But how does that overlap? It overlaps with you because it exists and is supposedly real. Like, just like you. So literally, there's not anything in existence that you'll see that can't relate to you in some like small capacity. Like, just there's literally nothing. There's not anything in existence that doesn't overlap with you at least 0.01%. There's not anything. There's nothing in existence that's completely like opposite to you. So imagine you are a conscious being with infinite power, but you're alone. That's the state. That's the condition. So you are a conscious being with infinite power, infinite intelligence, infinite will, infinite imagination, infinite potentiality and creative capacity. But the matter of the fact is that you're the only self with all those capacities. Like, what would that person do? Even though it's not really like, what would that do? See, you can't imagine, like, you can't create something that already exists, that's already created. Like this already exists, so how could I create it? It already exists. I can only create something that hasn't already been created. So in that sense, that's why this world is so backwards, and some people even say that it's like a hell realm, and why it's so inverted, where up is down and left is right. Yes, it is that way as a consequence of the truth. Like, see, because the truth is true, where up is up, down is down, left is left, right is right, reality is real, existence exists, black is black, white is white. That's like that is, in a sense, the unmanifest. The absolute. Infinite potentiality is unmanifest, is true already. So if that's already the case, it can't like be created again. So it can only create something that's not that. So if up is already up and I want to create something, then really all I can create, like, and I want to create something that's other than this, then what I would have to create is something where up is down. What I'd have to create is somewhere where left is right, not where right is right already, and where left is left already. No, I'll create something where left is right, and where up is down, and where good is bad. See, that's the only way you can create is through inversion and through illusion. And if you're already infinite and you wanted to create something other than that, you would have to create finity or finiteness or limitation, which is this world that we live in. And in this world that we live in, left is right, because it only matters where you measure it from. And down is up, because it only matters where you measure it from and where you compare it from. And all of this isn't, but it appears to be that it is. So it's like, it's literally inversion encapsulated. Like, if you really, really think about it, how could there be more, like, how could there be anything other than the self? How could there be anything other than truth? That's what you don't understand. Even falsehood. See, on the absolute level, falsehood is false, so it negates itself, and then there's only truth, and that's the absolute truth. But then, as soon as you step into the relative plane, which is where we live, and what like people want me to speak about, like the just Earth and so on, existence. In the relative plane, falsehood, even falsehood, is true. Otherwise, it wouldn't even exist or appear. Falsehood is true. That's why I'm saying truth is absolute. The truth is true, and even falsehood is true. See, so once like these realizations start sinking in, right? And then you start realizing, wait, so like, in a sense, like I've been here eternally, and I can never not be here. There's nowhere to go. See, this like where people even like escape boredom, because this all came from boredom as well. Where people escape boredom is the illusion that there's somewhere else to go, somewhere higher or even somewhere lower. It doesn't even matter, but just somewhere else. You think there's somewhere else, but when you actually break through that illusion and you realize, wait, I am exactly in the same place that I have always been. And no matter like how far I go that way, I will still be in the same place. Or how far I go that way, or that way, or that way. So, in a sense, a consequence of attaining absolute truth, even though I recommend everyone try to attain the absolute truth if that's what you desire. However, a consequence which you could say is a negative consequence, it's not really negative, but it's negative to the ego, which is like your human operating system. Like when you refer to yourself like as the human body, that's the ego speaking. So you as an ego, like as a person, it's going to be bad news. But you're not even a person. There's no such thing as person. There's no such thing as persons. There's not many people. That boundary, like that boundary where you think like that's a human there, like that's an imaginary boundary. The consequence of self-realization is that you no longer get to enjoy the entertainment of the illusions, because you just, it's not like when you really self-realize, it's not something that you are like some module on university where you learned it and then after a month you forgot it or something like that. Like, no, if you get self-realized, you will never go back. It's irreversible. So there may be some old patterns from the body from before you got self-realized that will still have inertia and momentum. So there will still be, you'll still kind of, as I said, the human desire kind of never goes away. So you'll still be kind of like desiring one thing here, one thing there, but then it'll just, it's like you can't unsee the illusion anymore. And the truth is not entertaining. Only the illusion is entertaining. And that's in a sense why everyone wants to stay stuck in the dream. And so the consequence of self-realization is that you can no longer like enjoy the dream, because you know that the dream is just a dream. It's not real. And as I said, there's not even such a thing as people or humans or anything. Even enlightened people, there's no such thing as an enlightened person. There's no such thing as a self-realized person. And then you're going to say, oh, but didn't you just say you're a self-realized person? Like, you could see, it's a tricky one because, how can I put it? There's even a saying, right? For example, with enlightenment, where a lot of spiritual people, yogis, and so on, like, they'll essentially say that an enlightened person would never call themselves enlightened because they're too enlightened for that. And it's just other people would start labeling them as enlightened because it will be so apparent and so on. And I even kind of believed that up until a certain point, because it came to a point to where, and the whole idea behind that is almost like it's suggesting that to claim yourself to be enlightened would be inaccurate and would be deceptive. It's essentially suggesting that you're lying. Like, anyone who says that they're enlightened is necessarily lying because no enlightened person would claim to like that they are enlightened. And I understand why they say that. And at first, like, yes, I'm sure most enlightened people wouldn't even call themselves enlightened. However, I don't think it's necessarily so that if you say you're enlightened, then you're not enlightened. And furthermore, as I said, the whole like basis of that is the basis that you're necessarily lying. But to me, it came to a certain point to where I realized to myself that it would be more of a lie if I told people I wasn't. At the same time, I'm not really enlightened because there's no me here. You see, there's not really like a Nathaniel here or a person. It's just that when I'm speaking to people, they still identify as themselves as a person. And when they look at me, no matter how many times I tell you I'm not a person or you're not a person, you still project and overlay onto me that distinction of a human. And in your mind, it still works through opposites, human or not human, enlightened or not enlightened. So it's almost like I have to use some kind of labels to communicate because language is all we have. If I could just telepathically communicate this to you and just beam my consciousness into your consciousness, like you would only have to be with, like, if I could like broadcast my consciousness, you would only need to experience my consciousness for 1 second or maybe like 5 seconds. And then I wouldn't have to tell you anything else. But that's impossible. So I have to speak to you through words. I still have to use labels, even though I already know that they're all inaccurate. And I tell you all the time that the map is not the territory. It still doesn't really matter or make a difference because your mind is it's almost algorithmic, it's automatic. So yes, if we're really speaking about like enlightened people, like humans and self-realized humans and so on, as I've said, like a self-realized human being, that's just someone who's attained to the absolute and has realized themselves as being the self, the absolute self, which means there's no opposite to you. There's no other. And you have to really see, I'm not saying that you're the only human being in existence or like the only sentient being. Like, I'm not saying that you're the only human being like that. That's not what I'm saying. Like when I'm saying solipsism is true, I'm saying that literally only the self exists, but not as a human. The self isn't anything in particular other than itself. The only thing that you can say for certain about the self is that it is itself. But everything else is uncertain. Everything else about the self, like how the self is appearing, if it's appearing as a human, or as the Milky Way, or as a TV show, or as a bacteria, that's all like in flux. But the self is itself always, and that self is absolute. So I'm not saying that you're like the only human in existence, because you're not even a human. So yeah, as I said, if we take humans to be real, then that's why I say, okay, an enlightened human or an enlightened person is this, and then the self-realized person is this. But that's only if we take humans to be real. And then when you see past all distinctions, once all distinctions collapse in your consciousness, when there are no more divisions within your consciousness and within the quantum field, you'll realize it's just a uniform field. And the only thing you can say about that field is that it's true. Nothing else. You can't even say it exists, because it doesn't, like existence, there can only be existence if there's two things, because existence is uniqueness. Like as I've explained, like this is unique. Like it exists because there's only one of this. Even though you can say there's a million Fanta cans, none of them are this one. So literally everything in existence is unique. And you can only create uniqueness if there's something else that's not that. That's why I said everything in this world is defined by what it isn't. But yeah, I'm just rambling at this point. But yeah, in a sense, the cost you have to pay for realizing the absolute truth is, in a sense, it's like you finished the game. It's like you finished the game, but see, I feel like self-realization would be perfect at the moment of death. But if you get self-realized and then you still stay in the body for whatever reason, many people tend to leave the body after that. But for whatever reason, if you're staying in the body, I'm not going to speak about why I'm staying in the body or whatever, but I've not decided to leave the body. However, being self-realized within this illusory world even though you can enjoy it still, and as I've explained in my past, the bliss video and the bittersweet, like you always have that underlying bliss where even when you're feeling bad, you still feel good and nothing can really budge you. But at the same time, you can't really enjoy the dream anymore either. And it's almost a great analogy is like, imagine you've played a game and there was only one level. And all you have to do in this game, it's a little 2D game. And then, well, it doesn't even matter how small, like complex. It could have even been like started from 1, 2, and then it started really simple. Then it went to 2, then it went to 3, then it went to 4, then it went to 5. It got more and more complex, more and more difficult with higher rewards and more gratification and more entertainment. That's in a sense the dream. You keep on going up and then into another level, into another level, into another level, into another level. And you can still enjoy that as an illusory being. Even the person who enjoys that doesn't exist. They only appear to exist. But then, imagine you completed the game. Like you've done all of the levels, but then now all you can do is repeat the level for eternity. See, like once you complete a game, you want to basically like shut it off and then, you know what I'm saying, play another game or something or whatever. But then imagine you finished this game, you've played it for an infinite amount of times, but it's just still there. That's the kind of boredom, the existential boredom. It's not even like a human boredom or I'm bored of this or I'm bored of that. Like, it's like, it's like you're bored of existence and you're no longer in the illusion that you could ever possibly not exist. It's so clear to you that you're absolute and you can never not be yourself. So it's just like, it's like, in a sense, the whole creation was God trying to escape itself. It wanted to like get outside, but there is no outside. And then self-realization is really realizing and just coming to terms with that there's no outside. Whereas everyone else in the dream is still inside, but they still think that they just need to go 100 meters more that way, and then I'll get behind the curtain, I'll get outside. But there is no outside. And when the mind hears that, then it's going to sound like, so it sounds like you're like saying that it's like trapped. Like something's trapping it. But no, it's not even that something's trapping it. Nothing's trapping it. It's just that it's everything and it's everywhere. So there's nothing that isn't it and there's nowhere else like to go. There's nothing other than it. So it creates these illusions, these imaginations of a world where there's others and where there is an outside. But then when you just break through the illusion, like once and for all, yeah, you can tend to get bored sometimes. And just the normal things which kind of entertained you before don't really seem to do the trick anymore. But yeah, I don't want it to be too depressing or anything like that. But yeah, I think I'm gonna leave that one there.